And we are back for the Thousand Worlds Book Club, and we're talking about Loaves and Fishes. I am joined by...
I am Gylbert Farwynd of the Lonely Light.
This is going to be a long video. Loaves and Fishes is the second adventure of Haviland Tuf. If you haven't read it, the link is below. I'm sorry, there's again no audio for this story. The events of Loaves and Fishes takes place shortly after the Plague Star. Tuf is looking for repairs to his newly acquired seed chip, which makes him as powerful as a god. And so Tuf travels to the planet of Southlam, where they have an advanced port that's capable of performing the repairs. The Southlamese also have a reputation for being ethical and fair. At the Southlam port, Tuf meets Tali Moon, the portmaster. She oversees Tuf's repairs and encourages Tuf to go see the planet for a while. On the way to the planet, Tuf meets another off-worlder who reveals that the Southlamese are mostly religious zealots who believe in having as many children as possible. They breed and expand so much that it's causing wars and tension with neighboring planets. However, due to an alliance between these neighboring worlds, the Southlamese have been confined to their own solar system. However, the off-worlder warns Tuf that if the Southlamese got a hold of his ship, these wars would certainly resume. While Tuf is exploring, Moon is called by her superior, George R.R, who tells Tali that because Southlam only has 27 years left of resources, they need Tuf's ship. He orders her to try to buy the ship at any price, but if Tuf won't sell, they will take the ship and compensate Tuf for it. Moon doesn't like Rael's plan because if they forcefully take Tuf's ship, no one will trade with Southlam anymore. Their reputation as an ethical planet will be destroyed. Nonetheless, Rael tells Moon to get the ship by any means possible. So Moon tries various techniques to get Tuf's ship. She first tries to overcharge Tuf and convince him that his ship is too pricey and that he should sell it. Then she tries to appeal to Tuf's morality by telling him that selling the Ark will save Southlam from starvation. After Tuf refuses, Moon uses a bogus charge of smuggling vermin to take Tuf's cat and offers the cat back for the ship. Tuf still refuses to sell. Moon then makes a wager with Tuf. If he solves their food shortage situation, she'll return the cat and give Tuf an interest-free loan on the ship repairs. If he can't do it, he'll forfeit the ship to them. So Tuf works while Moon bonds with his cat. He successfully develops a bountiful edible plant, along with superworms and a mold that lives off pollution. He also gives him some superplankton, some fast-breeding fish, mushrooms, and a bunch of other miracle items. However, this doesn't quite please Joes and Rael, who wants the ship more than ever because of its power. Moon sneaks over to Tuf to tell him to escape, but Tuf won't leave without his cat. So Moon has to go back for the cat and get it for Tuf. Moon fully expects to be imprisoned for high treason, and Tuf wonders why Moon helped him in the first place. She says it's because power corrupts. Joes and Rael and her people were good people, but the Ark made them unethical, and so she wants the Ark away. Tuf and Moon both wonder if Tuf too will be corrupted. The story ends with Tuf telling Moon that he will be back in 5 years to solve their new problems, which perplexes Moon. So Gylbert, what are your thoughts on the story?
Well, to start, the character of Tali Moon reminds me of Brienne of Tarth.
Absolutely, they're both large, homely women who have a strong sense of honor and little room for affection in their lives. And over time, they grow unexpectedly attached to our unusual protagonist.
Though Tali Moon has blue skin.
Well, yes, there's that, but keep in mind Brienne was Brienne the Blue in Renly's Rainbow Guard.
I sure hope she and Tuf get together in the end.
Well, if you're thinking about shipping Moon and Tuf, or any characters in Ice and Fire, it's important to note that romantic happiness is almost non-existent in our author's works. There are a couple stories where it happens, but it's really quite rare. Ice and Fire seems to be one long string of unrequited love.
Oh, but Blue Brienne and Moral Varys would have had such beautiful children. Preston, did you notice all of the time dedicated to the metaphor of flies and spiders?
Yeah, but I'm not sure there's much to it. Our author likes to write about spiders a bunch, especially in a story called This Tower of Ashes. Here Tali Moon is called Moss Spider, but it's really the Southlamese as a whole that are the spiders. Like spiders, they have to import food, and Tuf's ship is described as a big fly. And like spiders, the Southlamese have a lot of children. In Ice and Fire, we get a few spider references, including the mounts of the others and Rohan Weber from the Sworn Sword. But both of these situations seem awfully different from Loaves and Fishes. I think our author just really likes spiders. There's a bunch of random things that our author likes to write about over and over and over again, like redheads and albinos and bats and incest.
I imagine most spider offspring starve and die.
That is the long and short of it. Species that have high birth rates usually have high death rates as well. The Southlamese were driving their planet to starvation. It just wasn't sustainable. There's really no such thing as infinite resources and infinite expansion.
Across the Sunset Sea there is. It is a bountiful land, without winter or want, where death has no dominion.
Sounds great, Gylbert.
Preston, did you notice that this story is not very kind to religion?
Yeah, as we saw in The House of the Worm, our author simply does not have a very good opinion of the whole religion thing, and he is very consistent about this throughout his writing. Religious zealots are often seen as an uncompromising force and a serious problem in much of our author's work. In this story, the Suthamese refuse to see overpopulation as a problem because their religion demands they don't. There's no reasoning with them, there's no compromising with them, and that's the conflict of the story.
In many ways, the Suthamese are like the religion of R'hllor. They both believe in life's conquest over death. But they are both silly. The only place without death is the land beyond the sunset.
Yeah, I think our author believes in some sort of balance. Here in Loaves and Fishes, there needs to be a balance between production and consumption, as well as life and death. In Ice and Fire, we have Euron talking about a new long night, and the followers of R'hllor talking about an endless summer. Obviously, both of those extremes would be disastrous.
Interestingly, this story features another failure of democracy, or as we say on the Iron Isles, a kingsmoot. Religion has caused the masses to make bad decisions, and in turn, the politicians make bad decisions too.
Yeah, I'm not sure if our author has a problem with democracy in general, or just democracy that doesn't have sufficient separation of church and state. This is of course a huge problem with the Middle East in our world, and is also a huge problem on Planetos. The Faith of the Seven, which seems to have the support of the masses, causes the government to take irrational action. It wastes time on Cersei and Marjorie's trials when there's more pressing issues like starvation or Aegon invading. In Volantis, the religion of the Red God is pushing the city into an irrational war because they think Dany is a savior. And on the Iron Isles, religion keeps Asha, the most reasonable candidate, from getting elected because she's a woman.
Asha wasn't the most reasonable candidate. I was.
You wanted to sail the entire Ironborn society off into the ocean.
And?
Now I'd like to talk about the character of Josen Rael for a moment. He's interesting in that he wants the greater good, but that line of thinking really justifies any action.
The situation is somewhat Machiavellian, but at the same time, I feel our author is critiquing utilitarianism.
And that's the thing, Josen Rael wants to take Tuf's ship for the needs of the many. But if the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, what rights does the minority ever have?
And this gets back to the criticism of unchecked democracy. 2 wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner.
And we see the utilitarian argument a few times in Ice and Fire. Pycelle argues for the greater good when pushing for the assassination of Dany. And Varys claims that he's motivated by the good of the realm.
I imagine that tyrants think they are doing the greater good as well.
Josen Rael really shows how you can't use utilitarianism as a moral base. But he also shows how you can't use law as a moral base either. When the law didn't suit the Suthamese, they simply decided to change it in order to take Tuf's ship.
Because law is so readily changeable, it's useless as a moral base.
And this has a lot to do with Stannis. Although many fans love Stannis, it's quite apparent that our author doesn't like him. Stannis is of course a stickler for the law, but law can be changed to serve various self-serving parties. And which laws are focused on is pretty subjective as well. So what's the point of being a crusader for the law in and of itself? Stannis would say order, but his actions have created more chaos than order, so he's kind of a hypocrite.
So all of this is just an extension of the Plague Star argument.
Absolutely, we're still talking about what justifies rule. And this all still mirrors Ice and Fire. Ned claimed Stannis had legal right, but as we discussed before, legal right is meaningless as laws change and can be subjective. And the Suthamese tried to assert their legal right over Tuf, unconvincingly. Renly claimed that he should be king because he was well loved. This is the more democratic utilitarian approach. And Tally Moon tries to use this argument to get Tuf to hand over his ship as well. The Lannister argument is might makes right, which is what the Suthamese eventually try to pull on Tuf. In the end though, Tuf and Moon really settle on best ability as the basis of rule. If Tuf proves he's mastered the arc, he's justified in owning it. This is closer to Aegon or Dany's claim on the throne. Aegon has been trained to lead since a young age, and Dany is learning how to lead through her experiences in Slaver's Bay. This seems to be a technocratic justification, and I do wonder if this is our author's political belief in the end, that the technocrats, the experts, should rule.
But wouldn't power still make them into megalomaniacs?
Well, that is the primary criticism of any rule that's not democratic or rotational, and Tally Moon definitely has that fear about the Ark. It corrupted her people, and she fears that it's going to corrupt Tuf one day. And whether or not Tuf will be corrupted will be addressed in future Tuf stories.
Right, Loaves and Fishes is really the first story of a trilogy within the 7 Tuf stories.
Tali Moon and the planet of Suthlum will be back in a story called Second Helpings. But before we get to that, Tuf goes on to have some other adventures. So I'd like to say thank you to Gylbert Farwynd.
Gylbert King!
And our next story is called Guardians. The link for the story is below, and this one does have the audio. So check it out, and we'll see you next time.